TNA has featured some of the greatest tag team champions in wrestling history, from homegrown talent like Beer Money and the Motor City Machine Guns, to legendary duos like the Hardys and Team 3D. But these titles haven't always been draped in prestige. Today we're gonna look at the top 10 worst TNA tag team champions ever. A lot of these are gonna share commonalities, bro. We're not gonna shy away from analyzing what makes these teams absolutely awful. In fact, I tried to make a top 5 for this, but upon doing research, I couldn't leave all of these worthy candidates out. So without further ado, let's start in chronological order. Kicking off with a pretty early example, the Red Shirt Security, Kevin Northcutt and Joe Legend. The Red Shirt Security was a heel security team led by Don Callis. They were enforcing Jeff Jarrett's rule in TNA, protecting him and shutting down anyone that would challenge his authority, which sounds on brand.
He is Jeff Jarrett.
This led to a feud with Eric Watts and his own security team, Black Shirt Security, which included Chris Vaughn and Rick Santel. The Red Shirts would defeat 3 Live Crew, Ron Killings and BG James, to win the NWA World Tag Team Championships. Bet you didn't know that one. Their reign lasted a whole 7 days before they would lose to AJ Styles and Abyss, who we're gonna talk about in just a second. By the end of the year, Red Shirt Security had vanished, and this faction war between t-shirt colors actually went nowhere. But like I said before, they dropped the titles to AJ Styles and Abyss, who were very reputable, but what are they doing together? Well, this was a quintessential Vince Russo storyline, which we'll see quite a bit of as we proceed with this countdown. AJ Styles was feuding with Abyss and actually interfered in one of his matches. Styles demanded a title shot from authority figure Don Callis. He never clarified on which title, so Don Callis placed him in a tag title match, teaming with his foe Abyss. Can they coexist? A question that plagues this entire division from the start of TNA. In some cases, it's produced some compelling storytelling, but Russo recycles this reluctant partners trope constantly, and you'll soon find that out. So a week after Red Shirt Security had won the belts, they then lost their titles to a dysfunctional team of 2 guys that hate each other. So shockingly, the tag champions still weren't on the same page. In fact, they didn't defend the titles once. It actually culminated in a tables match where the winner would become the sole tag team champions. Oh yeah, and Abyss won thanks to Lex Luger. Yes, Lex Luger, that guy, press slammed AJ Styles through a table, and Abyss was now the tag team champions. But we're not done here. The titles were now vacated, and TNA had announced a tournament to crown new champions. So the Red Shirts, who beat a legitimate team in 3 Live Crew, were now losing to 2 guys that didn't even want a team in the first place. And now we had 1 tag team champion until it was just vacated anyway. What was the point? The tournament was won by Kid Cash and Dallas, which was fine enough, but more chaos ensued as Cash and Dallas would soon drop their newly won titles to a duo that was formed overnight. We're talking about D'Lo Brown and Apollo. Yes, D'Lo Brown and Apollo were tag team champions in TNA. And the way they won it was quite unique. In fact, they won by disqualification when Cash and Dallas used a pipe, an obscure TNA rule where titles could change hands on a disqualification. So D'Lo Brown and Apollo were champions off of a technicality. Quite the swerve there, Vinny Roo. But Cash and Dallas were going to get their rematch clause the next week. And D'Lo Brown and Apollo lost their titles the same way they won them, by disqualification. In fact, Apollo had the same pipe, and he couldn't resist using it. He just went berserk. What an idiot. Apollo would leave TNA shortly after, and so would D'Lo. This was just another showcase of Russo being obsessed with contrived finishes. What was the point of this? From that point on, we saw a lot of great tag teams rule, like America's Most Wanted and AJ Styles and Christopher Daniels. But by 2007, TNA had new tag team championships, and the division was absolutely stacked. But that didn't stop Vince Russo from overbooking everything. It started at Victory Road 2007 in the Match of Champions, pitting TNA heavyweight champion Kurt Angle and X Division champion Samoa Joe together against TNA Tag Team champions Team 3D. Whoever got the pinfall victory would then win the loser's championship, meaning if Joe or Angle pinned Team 3D, they would win the tag titles. So, Samoa Joe pinned Brother Ray and did get the gold. He also opted not to pick a partner. Okay, so where do we go from here? Well, Kurt Angle and Samoa Joe need to settle their beef, so at Hard Justice, the next month, Angle and Joe met in a winner-takes-all main event. This was for the TNA World Title, the Tag Team Championships, the X Division Championship, and even the IWGP title. So we've gone a month without an actual tag division, with Samoa Joe holding it hostage in this Angle with Kurt Angle. But we've got a Kurt Angle and Samoa Joe match for like 10 different belts. Sounds cool enough, right? Well, the classic fans were hoping for was kind of overshadowed by Karen Angle, Kurt Angle's wife, who was teasing marital problems at the time on screen, only to interfere, slide a chair to Kurt, and help him claim every single championship in TNA, including the tag titles. This was one of Russo's worst swerves yet. It was so illogical, it was so stupid, yet everyone saw it coming because we're so used to expecting that from Vince Russo. If it doesn't make sense, it's probably gonna happen. Speaking of not making sense, Kurt Angle was now the tag team champion. And the next month at No Surrender, he would find a partner in Sting. And this evolved into another can they coexist angle. I've had about enough of these. But their challengers weren't exactly conventional. TNA wanted to make some news, so they brought in NFL star Pac-Man Jones, and he was in the headlines, primarily for his NFL suspension for an assault charge. Also, Pac-Man couldn't wrestle, like literally, it was in his contract. So Pac-Man Jones, he would stand on the apron while Ron Killings would do all of the work. You're probably saying there's no way they could possibly win the tag team titles from two legends like Kurt Angle and Sting. Well, Karen Angle was back. In fact, this time she faked a slap from Sting, causing Kurt to turn on his partner, allowing Team Pac-Man to become the new TNA Tag Team Champions. So the division has been held hostage with these solo tag title reigns, but now it's on an actual tag team. Well, never mind. I guess it's on one guy again, because Pac-Man Jones literally can't touch anyone. So this is a complete laughingstock, and TNA had to repair it. So they threw out a green Xavier Woods, dressed him up like Apollo Creed, and said, now you're the champion. This substitution was short-lived, as AJ Styles and Tomko would then claim the tag team titles. Pac-Man Jones would leave soon after, and the entire experiment just reeked of desperation from TNA. So AJ Styles and Tomko had a pretty good run with the belts. But we'd be back to nonsense sooner than later when Kaz and Super Eric entered the picture. Eric Young, who was afraid of Black Rain and Relic, me too, created his superhero alter ego, Super Eric. And with Kaz's help, they captured the tag titles. Now, you're probably waiting for the Vince Russo twist. Well, let me give it to you. Super Eric and Eric Young were technically different people. That was AJ Styles' protest, and Jim Cornette bought it. He stripped him of the belts. Kaz and Super Eric's title reign lasted about an hour. This was a nonsensical story, but you could have built on it at least. Someone decided it would be more entertaining to just strip them. This was another one of these technicality angles that just felt like a punchline. My natural reaction would be to say, hey, maybe Kazarian can turn heel here. What Eric Young just did was pretty stupid and jeopardized them having championship gold. Did this happen? No. But the division did get more on course from this point on. In fact, it'd be about 3 years until we had another inductee into this horrid countdown, which leads us to Hernandez and Matt Morgan. What unites these two, you may ask? Well, nothing. In fact, they had a rocky partnership from the start. Can they coexist? Well, the answer's no, because Matt Morgan would eventually turn on Hernandez. Although one crucial piece of info, Matt Morgan had the tag team titles still. Oh, not this again! Abyss, Samoa Joe, Kurt Angle, they all did this. Only this time it wasn't a legend holding the division hostage, it was Matt Morgan. So now Matt Morgan was the sole tag team champion in TNA. Only this time, TNA did force him to pick a partner. So he chose Amazing Red, and it actually worked out. They successfully defended the titles against the Motor City Machine Guns. But then he turned on him. So where is this going? Well, Morgan was working handicap matches defending his tag titles. Smart guy. This allowed the Band to pin Matt Morgan and win the TNA tag titles. Now, the Band was just another rehash of the NWO, something we had seen 1,000 times, only now it was over 10 years since their heyday. Kevin Nash and Scott Hall would become the tag champions, then inducting Eric Young into the Band. Never thought I'd see Eric Young in the NWO, but this would apply the Freebird rule, meaning any combination of this trio could act as a duo defending the titles. They didn't get much of a chance to because only 41 days into their reign, Scott Hall was released from TNA due to legal trouble, forcing TNA to strip the group of the titles. The Band was dead on arrival. Seems like this could have been prevented with some common sense. But TNA had to learn the hard way, and now Scott Hall was gone, and Kevin Nash would eventually dye his hair black and return to WWE as Diesel, making this title reign memorable for all of the wrong reasons. Let's move on to something not as memorable. We'll jump ahead here a bit and we'll save the best for last. Let's go to 2014. James Storm has a cult now. Okay? It's called the Revolution. James Storm has made some interesting recruits so far, Sonata and Manic, okay? But now the Revolution is targeting Davey Richards of the Wolves. Storm lured the Wolves out to the ring before beating him down and revealing that he had a Feast or Fired briefcase that would allow him to cash in a tag team title opportunity. Now, this was kind of cool because literally everyone forgot that he even had this briefcase. It had been months since he had shown up on television with it. Not only did he cash in his briefcase, he revealed a tag team partner. He wasn't going to do one of those solo tag title runs, but he did call someone that did, Abyss, who helped assault the Wolves and capture the gold. Storm's cult-like stable would lose steam very quickly. He added Mahabali Shera, who was renamed Koya, a translation of the word lost, kinda fitting, and the stable soon spiraled into irrelevance. The Wolves reclaimed the titles and the faction dissolved with really no heat. You could say the Revolution's tag reign was one of TNA's most misguided attempts at faction dominance. We'll go to another one of those with our honorable mention. I wanted to keep this countdown to a list of 10, and this one would rank at 11th if I had to line them up. Brian Myers and Trevor Lee, who won the belts during the TNA vs. Global Force Wrestling storyline. Oh boy. They would beat the Wolves for the title, winning gold for the Green Brand, but dropped them literally a week later. It wasn't too offensive and their matches were good enough, but it was pretty unnecessary, and I'm not sure what unites Kurt Hawkins and Cameron Grimes, aside from the fact that Jeff Jarrett was promising them visions of grandeur. In fact, Trevor Lee wasn't even the original plan. It was supposed to be Brian Myers and Tommaso Ciampa, but with NXT calling his name, TNA said, all right, here's Trevor Lee, and here's the tag titles. Not a lot of fanfare here, but also not the most offensive reign we've seen. However, this last one is certainly closer to the worst. Mexican America, Hernandez and Anarquia. So Hernandez had formed Mexican America with his cousins, Sarita and Rosita, also known as Selena Vega. So they were all about Mexican pride, okay? Kind of a rehash of LAX minus the edge. And they would actually win the belts from Beer Money. This was putting the spotlight on a new act relatively quickly. And wow, it did not go well. They were kind of stinking up the division. Boring characters and pretty bad matches. In a division known for some really good ones. It got to the point where they weren't even being featured on TV, and fans were forgetting they even had the titles. By November, they demanded more screen time or threatened to quit. Luckily, general manager Sting arranged a tag title match against Matt Morgan and Crimson, who would take the titles from Mexican America and end this abomination of a tag title run, See, most of the reigns on this list are victims of bad booking, primarily from one bro, but Vince Russo didn't have his fingertips on this one. Hernandez and Anarquia were just dead on arrival, just completely unworthy of TNA Tag Team Championships. There was never a point where they were an engaging team, and they paled in comparison to Hernandez's prior work with Homicide in LAX. That's why Mexican America definitely deserves a shout as some of the worst tag team champions of all time. Who do y'all think is the worst team to hold these belts? Let us know in the comments if we missed out on anyone, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe